everybody, and good evening, and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. I'm your presenter, Stephenson, Worme, and we've got a very interesting program for you this evening. In fact, we'll be looking at the 2025 budget in review. And this, of course, was presented last Friday by the Honorable Dennis Cornwall, and under the theme towards Vision 75, Grenada Resilient and Rising. We've got two important individuals here in the studio with us this evening, and we'll be looking in as detailed a manner as possible at the 2025 budget. To my immediate left, we've got Miss Matonia Munroe, and she is the owner and manager of WISFIN, and she is a financial consultant. A lady I've known almost all her life, and I wouldn't tell you in years how long that has been. And of course, Mr. Richard Duncan, of course, who is no stranger. He is the chairman of C.B.I, OBE, and retired banker and economist, and also advisor in the Ministry of Finance. Lady, gentlemen, good evening and welcome.
Good evening and welcome, thank you. Good evening to the viewing and listening public.
Well, first I should ask, how important, Ms. Munroe, is a national budget?
A national budget is of crucial importance. It helps to guide the policy decisions of the government. It helps to keep people engaged, the persons within the context of the nation. A budget helps persons to understand what government is about. It also speaks to government's accountability. It highlights the seriousness within which government is taking governance seriously. And it helps us to understand, as participants in the wider economy, how government is actually using the taxes or the funds or the revenues they are generating, or that is being generated by the country, how they are using it, whether or not they are prudent, whether or not they are making sound decisions, whether or not their decisions, in fact, can lead to the betterment and the better quality of life for the public at large. So it is crucially important, and it's one of the things that I believe government should do, must do, given their mandate to the people, particularly in the context of a democracy.
Do you think it has generated over the years fervor in the population, and people are really involved, embraced, and in tune with what's taking place budget-wise?
Oh yes, for sure. If I look back to when I was a child, probably in secondary school, I think that's when I first started to have an interest in terms of government, in terms of budgets, in terms of even politics to some extent. And the budget is one of the things that the nation, interestingly, is always just about prepared to listen to. Just about everybody puts on their phone, they get next to television, whether it is a bus driver, a child, a school child, persons in the financial sector. It doesn't matter whichever walk of life. The nation is engaged in budget, and I think of late, persons have become even more interested as information continues to come out, as people come closer to the idea of what governance is, because information is everywhere. People are taking a keen interest in terms of what is happening in the country. So yes, I would say that the fervor is definitely at a higher level.
Mr. Duncan, with all the figures and some of them astronomical, do you think that the proletariat generally have a good feel of what's taking place and the numbers? What's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, well, you mentioned the proletariat. I think the thing is, those of us who have been educated on the backs of taxpayers, earned a degree, first degree master's in the field of finance, accounting, economics, or whatever, to my mind, are duty bound to simplify these things and to truthfully engage the quote-unquote proletariat to understand what is at play. Having made that point, I think most people look out to hear, boy, Are there new taxes? Are there increases in taxes? Are there increases in the social safety net offerings? Are there changes or improvements in the cost of living, cushioning mechanism? So the common man look out for those things, in my view. The big numbers and so on don't quite really matter to the small man. There are some people now who look out for opportunities in the budget, and they are a bit more astute. And I will point to one or two that are there for people who want to invest, or for people who are looking for opportunities to grow their businesses. So that's how people look at the budget. And to Mrs. Munroe's point about the governance, people will have to understand that had midnight March 31st arrive and the appropriation bill is not assented to, the government falls. It's a constitutional obligation to have the right to spend for the fiscal year by April 1st of the year in question. So that's where the rules, the sequencing of the activities that lead to this grand plan for the country. Yeah.
The presentation of the budget has been uncharacteristically delayed, and that created quite a stir and concern among several people. Any particular reason or reasons for it a little on the later side this year?
Well, it is late, but not habitually late. It's usually on time in the last several years, but it has been as late as March, in years gone by. The Minister of Finance has made it quite clear that the attention and focus required to treat with the aftermath and the recovery and the putting together of programs, plans, and systems post-Hurricane Beryl is the main reason why the ministry was this late in getting the budget document and all the things in place for presentation to Parliament. But there's absolutely nothing wrong in a budget. As I say before, being in March for the year in question has happened in the past, and you are within your constitutional norms.
Ms. Munroe, the current budget revenue, almost $2 billion, that's pretty high, and for some people, hearing that figure says, well, this is a small country. $2 billion, that's quite a lot. What's your thoughts?
Yes, I can imagine why some people may feel a little bit nervous about that. It's new for many people. It's perhaps new for the country. But if you take a wide look at the budget does have a personality in my view. I think the adjective I would use here is visionary. It's far-ranging, it's extensive. There are things that are stated in the budget, quite frankly, that most Grenadians perhaps would have clamored for, wanted to do. Governments in the past have spoken about it. And so these kinds of feat indeed will take large investments. It is going to be grander than what we normally do. We want to transform the country in terms of the mandate that the government believes that it has. And if you are truly looking at transformation, you just simply cannot stay within your same sphere. So whilst the figures are incredible, yes, I agree it is, but I mean, if we have been listening in terms of what the government has said, has unctioned that it wants to do, I am not at all surprised that the figures have gotten to this limit. I think what is important is to examine where the allocations are actually going, what exactly is the plan of government and how it intends to use these funds, and whether or not we believe that the use of those funds or the planned use of those funds, quite frankly, is going to translate into a transformational Grenada. I think that is the bigger question, but I'm not at all shocked, and I think in the presentation and some of the contents of the budget, it certainly supports justifiably, whether arguably or not, it supports why the figures are this high.
How challenging would this be, Mr. Duncan, to manage this pretty huge figure contextually?
Right, so the budget is not as high or as large as we think it is. The gross domestic product of Grenada is about 4.4 billion. The budget is about 1.9. So if we look at it in the context of gross domestic product, we are quite there. If we compare it to other countries in the Eastern Caribbean Currency Union, we are there or thereabouts in terms of the size of the budget. I think the key is on the revenue side, because remember, you have a current account surplus. You have more revenue than you are spending on consumptions. You have a current account surplus. Can you collect that revenue? And if you look at the numbers based on what IRD and customs have been doing over the years, and you look at the strength of the economy, it is very credible, that projection of revenue intake. And I want to take time out to hail the staff of the Inland Revenue Department, because since the amnesty, they have improved the tax administration. Taxpayer compliance has improved, and loopholes have been closed, more or less. So you have increased revenue collections without increasing tax rates, without introduction of new taxes. It says that there is growing tax efficiency in the system. The problem, obviously, is on the implementation side of the capital budget in particular, and even current account programs. And people have been lamenting, policymakers over the years, observers, that the implementation rate of projects in the public service is weak and, quite frankly, piss poor. The idea is, has this government done enough to strengthen the implementation capacity of the various ministries and departments for the ambitions that the government has? And that's a big question. And given that risk of what I like to call, the slow implementation rate, I refer to it sometimes as execution velocity. How quickly can you correctly and with speed get certain tasks done to move projects along? That has to be corrected, right, along the way, if the government's ambitions are to be achieved. So that's the challenge. So again, in the past, you probably wanted to do things and you did not have the resources. Right now, you have the resources and you want to do things, but you have a constraint in the capacity of the bureaucracy to really execute.
How challenging would this be for the present administration to sustain its move in terms of implementation? Now, in the political campaign, there was this talk about we're going to get this done and we've got to get it done fast. It's verging on 3 years. Your own assessment, has the government done well, reasonably well?
No. I would say exceedingly well. I mean, they have youth on their side. They have energy on their side as the politicians, as the policymakers. So they are very quick in analysis and policy decision making. Ministers do not implement. And the permanent secretaries, the technocrats, and the general staff in the ministries are the ones to execute the policy. So if you look at some of the big ticket items that the government campaigned on, they were able to get some of them done very quickly. So for example, you look at payment of the pension arrears. That was a matter of information gathering, analysis, validation, and so on, some of which were already in train, and basically accelerated that and achieved that particular objective. If you look at pension reform, again, consultants were engaged, analysis done, the system was designed, there were some consultations, and if you check the passage of the bill, late sittings of Parliament towards the end of the year, because the government decided that when the sun rises on January 1st, 2025, the pension reform would be in effect. So again, the people in legal affairs would have worked very hard, the people in DPA would have worked very hard to achieve those things. Right? You look at the Ministry of Infrastructure, they might be limited in terms of the number of engineers, the level of experience. You look at some of the contractors in terms of their own capacity. So there are constraints in and around the public service that would more or less call into question the execution velocity of some of the things that the government wants to do. But in terms of looking at the government's manifesto, the major campaign promises, many of them have been ticked off long ago, and others are pretty much well in train in being achieved. Just to segue a little bit on the big project, which is Project Polaris, the new hospital. right? Some of the quick moves that were made. So land acquisition, for example, you're talking about a hospital and so on, the first thing you got to do is to acquire the land. So early up, the government made the move, acquired the land, and has duly compensated the owner of the land. So that is in train. But now we have to conceptualize, you have to design, probably about 10,000 decisions you have to make before you even start to pour, one truckload of concrete in these massive projects. But it is in train and on point.
Right. So the total damages caused by Hurricane Beryl are estimated at 218 million, or equivalent to 16.5% of Grenada's 2023 GDP, quite a bit. Now, how challenging is this to the economic stability of the country, Ms. Munroe?
Okay, well, first of all, I would say that the risk that is involved, the natural risk, the inherent risk that we are faced with right now climatically, is not something at all that we can avoid. And with respect to your question, indeed, the challenge is great, and I think what makes it even greater is that we cannot necessarily ascertain the scope of the value in terms of the scope of some of the damages that can occur. It is also very difficult to be able to even ascertain the regularity within which these kinds of destructions that are caused by climate change can occur. We are still in the process of recovery for Hurricane Beryl that passed and damaged more to the north of Grenada, and of course well into Carriacou and Petite Matique. And the government, I agree with Mr. Duncan, has a certain degree of speed. I think it is visible. You can see that some of the actions that they can take as far as is possible to be able to make the corrections or to meet these challenges with resolutions. They are doing all that they can in terms of speed, but the question remains, the uncertainty surrounding these kinds of damages and the implications for the country as a whole. And when we look at the national budget, for example, Mr. Duncan spoke about the surplus, the revenue, the surplus that we have of about 86.1 million thereabout. I also want to make reference to the significant number of funds that came in from the C.B.I, for example, that supported a lot of some of these efforts that government has made. But if, for example, we have, God forbid, another national disaster, whether it is the same or similar, the question begs, does government have enough room space in terms of our own capacity as a country, in terms of our own revenue generation as a country, in terms of our own additional sources of revenue to be able to support? So I do think that it is going to be a bit challenging, notwithstanding government's focus, notwithstanding government's prudence, notwithstanding government's efforts to mitigate and to do things to deal with the challenge of climate change. But I do think that is going to continue to remain a question mark. The only thing I can suggest that government can continue to maintain is a focused attitude on prudence. I think also they need to continue to collect as much information as they possibly can with respect to climate change, as much involvement in terms of extending its arms to other regional and international bodies to ensure that we have this kind of padding to be able to properly address the challenges that natural disasters triggered by climate change can bring, because it can be very, very uncertain and it's difficult to measure. But I think it remains a challenge for the government.
And have we been doing well and sufficiently, Mr. Duncan, in terms of our preparation? You probably can't prepare entirely, but in terms of preparation, NADMA and technological advancement, you think Grenada is on the right path in anticipation and preparations for such natural disasters? And of course, it goes beyond hurricane. In the next 60 or so days, the official hurricane season would start.
Grenada is partially on the right path. And why do I say that? We had Hurricane Ivan in 2004. We came up with a new building code. Hurricane Beryl passed. Nobody, as far as I'm aware, has assessed the damages done, house by house, to ask which of these were designed and built according to new building code to determine if that code is adequate. So that's lost data already, because they cannot go and collect it now because you finish demolish the structure and what have you not. Nobody has asked of these houses that were destroyed completely, how many were approved by the Planning and Development Authority. And my point is that people whose houses have been destroyed but duly approved by Planning and Development Authority, the question has to be asked. As a homeowner, a prospective, I'm not an engineer. If I pay taxes and I bring my plan into PDA for vetting and they have granted approval, then I expect my house, if the architect says designed to withstand category 5 and a category 4 pass, I expect my house to remain standing. And if it falls, it means that the contractor did not build as designed, or the design was not a category 5 design, which PDA has to pick up, in my humble view. So there might be a case for a class action suit by those whose properties have been demolished by this hurricane but have planning approval, in my view. To say that your house is good to go as designed, approved, then again, I cannot supervise the contractor. PDA, to my mind, has to be on point with those contractors from time to time to see to it that as a tax-paying member of the public, that this guy is designing what you, as PDA, has approved. So I'm saying there are lessons that we have missed. There are things that we still have to do to make sure that our country prepared. The population cannot build as they please. And when a category 2, 3, or 4 hurricane passes, come cap in hand to the government to build it back. It is unfair. And not only that, you cannot find them on the property tax roll. Not even paying property taxes. So, we all have our part to play. The last point is, obviously, insure under CRIF. It might be expensive, but it's no longer a debate. And what you got to do is to, based on the modeling, decide how you would recalibrate insurance for, and we call it parametric insurance. Once certain parameters are met, wind speed, wave action, rainfall, you get coverage, right? So always calibrate that, pay your premium in full and on time, so if something happens, you are covered. Because you could never save and put aside enough money to self-insure.
So Grenada benefited for, I think, 42 to 44 million in parametric insurance.
I think it's more than that, because the central government benefited, NAWASA benefited, and right. And again, when we say parametric, sometimes you get payout even if there's no damage. The parameter has been exceeded, but your actual physical loss is less than, when you evaluate the monies that you're getting because of the, parameters, whether it's wind speed, rainfall, as I said before, wave action, and so on. So it's a really beautiful catastrophic insurance, well, parametric insurance, not catastrophic, program that we have in the sub-region. And the premiums are steep, but it's better to be safe than sorry.
Do most of our Caribbean countries?
Quite a few, and Latin America have signed on to it, yes.
Oh, nice, You talked a little bit...
Just to make one point, so St. Vincent now was hopping mad to say that Union Island get damaged real bad, right? And they only get a little bit of money. But it's what you're insured for.
Right.
You understand the point? And they were not happy at all. But we had insured properly. Premium paid on time, the parameters that we insured for, were in place compared to St. Vincent. That's why,
You briefly mentioned about property tax, and I don't know what sort of review they've had on that over many years. Is that something the government would look at in the future? Some people have declared you've got to raise property tax so that it would improve revenue. What's your thoughts about that?
I mean, the property tax valuations of properties have not been done for quite a while. I think last year a valuation exercise was conducted. I'm not too sure what's the plan for the utilization of those valuations as far as recalibrating the property tax is concerned. I'm not sure.
The budget for Carriacou and PD Martinique has increased from 33.4 million in 2024 to 44 million in 2025, a clear demonstration of some measure of commitment, of course, to ensure the recovery process. Your thoughts about that increase with the while?
Yeah, I think it's necessary. Carriacou and Petit Martinique, of course, remain a very important part of the Grenadian heritage, and particularly it is important for them not being physically on the mainland. It's very important for any government to ensure that they feel a part of the Grenadian heritage. Not beyond that, having sustained that level of damage, we have to appreciate that it's going to take a whole lot more than an arm and a leg to get Carriacou and Petit Martinique back to what it was previous to Beryl. And so I think it is good. I would say kudos to the government for demonstrating its seriousness in terms of getting the country, not the country, but the island back on track. I think that they have done a lot during the earlier periods of the disaster. I think that Grenada's commitment through leadership and in terms of government support as well has been very pronounced over the last few months since Hurricane Beryl. So I think that is really just something to indicate to persons living on the islands that, you know, the government is actually very serious. It's not just talk. But if you're going to move the needle on the money, surely it means that they are serious about it and that they're taking it very, very, very serious.
Over the years, Carriacouans and Petit Martinicans have been rather peeved, thinking that they have not received the good end of the stick, so to speak, and sometimes they feel a bit ostracized. How closely will they be looking at the government's response and the sort of aid that should be given to them?
Well, I think they are looking closely at it, and I think that was audibly echoed since from the beginning. Social media is there. You can see, you can feel the tenor of things. You don't have to be physically there, but I think that they have made it quite clear that they are looking on. They are looking on intently to see not just how much government invests, but again, as Mr. Duncan alluded to, the speed at which government is going to execute. They're also looking at the implementation process. Having gone through Hurricane Ivan, I know what it is like when things just doesn't feel as if it's quite coming. Government is on the television talking about how much of this they're getting, how much aid they're getting, how much distributions that is happening. But on the ground, logistically, it can be a nightmare, and it can also be very difficult logistically for people to literally feel as though government is actually doing something. So I think the Carriacouians, the Petit Martinicans, they are indeed looking. I cannot speak explicitly to what their view is. I'm only speaking from my perspective. It would be best place for them to say, okay, this is what we feel. But I do think it cannot be argued that there has been a really concerted effort to reach out, to support, to help, and also to drive the country, the island, back to its pre-burial point. So I think there is something to be said about that.
This is the 2025 budget in review. When we come back, we take a short break. We come back, we look at health and wellness. We'll be right back.
Grenada, it's time to feel the adrenaline and crown national champions. The Horizon National Championship 2025 is expected to be bigger, faster, and more thrilling than ever. Mark your calendars for March 15th and 16th at the Karani James Athletic Stadium. The nation's best athletes will battle for glory in electrifying races, soaring jumps, and powerful throws. Admission, finish line $30, main stand $20, bleachers $10. Speed, strength, and heart-stopping finishes. It's all happening from 11 a.m. daily. Be there to witness future Grenadian stars. Get your tickets now at Grenadian Optical, Melville Street, St. George, and Spiceland Mall, Grand Anse, and GoToFed.com.
Shop with confidence at Courts. Get the lowest prices guaranteed. Get appliances, furniture, electronics, and so much more. If you find a lower price on any other products elsewhere, we'll match the price. Plus, we'll give you back 110% of the difference. Shop with confidence only at Courts. Bringing value home. Special conditions apply.
In a world driven by digital innovation, our future is defined by connectivity and communication, shaping how we learn, work, and interact. But what safeguards our digital rights? The Electronic Communications or EC Bill will. The EC Bill ensures rights such as improved quality of service, data privacy and security, support for universal service and access, and complaint resolution are protected, with a tribunal to resolve disputes. This is consumer protection. The EC Bill also ensures a competitive environment for electronic communications companies to enter the market. There are many other benefits of the EC Bill. ECTEL is paving the way for a fair, secure, and inclusive digital society for our contracting states.
ECTEL and the NTRCs, digitally transforming our space together.
Grenada, the moment you've been waiting for has arrived. The Spice Mass Corporation presents The Unveiling, where elegance meets excitement in a night of beauty, artistry, and anticipation. On March 14th at 8 p.m., the Trade Center Annex transforms into a spectacle of grace and grandeur as 7 remarkable contestants are revealed, each vying for the coveted title of National Carnival Queen 2025. Indulge in an evening of live music, captivating performances, and pure enchantment. Dress to impress. Formal, fiery, bold, fearless. Enjoy complimentary wine on arrival as you immerse yourself in the magic. Tickets are $100, food inclusive. Available now at Go to Fet, Grenadian Optical, Town and Grand Anne's, and Gittins Pharmacy, Grand Anne's. The Unveiling, March 14th at 8 p.m. A night of elegance, a moment in history. Will you be there?
Welcome back to Budget Review 2025. So we'll be looking now at health and wellness. And there is, of course, the impending construction of a new hospital to the tune of 48 million. Well, in fact, 23.6 million has been allocated. And then there is the special fund at the ECCB, which amounts to some 25 million. So we're talking about $48 million. Project Polaris, Mr. Duncan, it sounds exciting, doesn't it?
Well, no, it is exciting, and the figures you see there are just for year one. The project is far more complex and larger than that. It is clearly designed to be truly transformational. The Prime Minister has made it very clear that Grenada will become the healthcare capital of the OECS, and therefore the project is multifaceted. Right? It will involve public-private partnerships as well to make sure that the state does not carry the entire, complex. So the hospital is one part. You have the concept of having retirement villas. For example, you have specialist centers such as oncology for cancer treatment, plastic surgery. So really and truly it is a multi-year transformational project, but the core and center is to make sure that at least Grenadians would have enhanced care and enhanced outcomes from this hospital. Now, we have a National Sustainable Development Plan, and unless we stick to that plan, which I think has broad cross-sectional political acceptance because it was conceptualized, consulted upon, and developed in the last administration. This administration has embraced it lock, stock, and barrel because the theory is this is what is good for Grenada. The question is who is best able to bring it about. And the people decide that from time to time. Right now, once the people in the driver's seat pushing forward that plan, at some other point, somebody else will be there. But the trajectory and direction remains the same. So you're not, swerving all over the place, but you have a consistent direction and so forth. So that is key. The master plan obviously has to be developed. You have to put in the broad infrastructure. You have to make sure you have the model in terms of the number of beds of different kinds, the private wards. There's supposed to be a component for what we call medical tourism, right? Whereby people who can afford it would fly in from time to time for specialist treatment and care, and they fly back out, right? Again, that's private sector driven as part of their thing. You want to make sure that you have, with these specialist facilities available, you have, like in hotels, for example, you have a CARICOM rate. So once you're a member of CARICOM and you're a Grenadian, the rate that you would pay for certain treatments could be lower than a foreigner would pay. So that's where the concept of medical tourism come in, but at the same time, your people can have access and benefit from that. So it is early days, very, very early days for such a major transformational project. I put it as not dissimilar from the construction of the international airport, or not dissimilar from the build-out of SGU, right? We have a master plan, a master strategy, a master vision, and you drive over time to its realization.
Ms. Munroe, it's a massive project, isn't it?
Certainly is.
A little scary?
I don't think we should approach it with scare.
Okay.
I think it's definitely a need. We recognize and understand the constant deterioration of the healthcare services in Grenada. I think that is a national consensus. And this is not something that we should continue. It's not a trajectory that we should continue on. I am pleased that there is a level of seriousness in terms of dealing with the medical crisis, the health institutional crisis that we face in Grenada. We know of a significant amount of cancer cases, for example, in Grenada that has skyrocketed. We also know of the continued death by way of diabetes because of poor health management, poor management plans, even to some extent lack of financial resources on the part of individuals to protect themselves, to eat better. And then when the persons do come down with these types of diseases, we have even cases with children, children, 5 years old, 6 years old, coming down with these terrible illnesses. And there is just no recourse, right? If you're not on the financial side, you can basically say, well, God, is either you give life or this person is dead. So it is a serious crisis, So I am excited and happy about the fact that this kind of idea, this sort of a holistic health idea, beyond just a building, obviously beyond just a pretty building, I would add to that caveat, or some kind of impressive new hospital, but the focus, the intention, the ideas, the outlook, the objectives, they are broad, they are far-ranging. They don't only seek to secure, hopefully, better health care. I guess perhaps later on we will be talking about the national health insurance, which is a conversation that to me falls in tandem with this new initiative for many reasons. But it is really necessary that we level up. To roll back on what Mr. Duncan has said, however, it is really, really, really crucial that we understand that there must be a measured private sector involvement. This is crucial. This type of project is going to cost. The maintenance alone, we're talking about high-end equipment, we're talking about even attracting the kind of talent to be able to execute the ideas. It's not going to be something simple, and it's going to be something that can create serious expenses for the government. So being able to fine-tune the private sector's involvement must happen, and it has to be as intentional, methodical, and thoughtful as the entire plan itself to bring through this incredible foresight by the government, because in order for it to be able to function, operate into the foreseeable future, you must have a mechanism to ensure that the financial capacity of the project itself can sustain, maintain, and pay for the operational aspect of it. So that is what I would say, but I do think it is time overdue, and I think it can bring lots of incredible opportunities, and it could be another form of revenue, right? We talk all the time about the limitations of taxation. No country can survive with just constantly increasing taxes. It's just not something that can happen. The country will at a point in time be capped. So if we can find alternative revenue sources, right, whereby we can develop and expand outside of those things and enriching our country, enriching our people, while at the same time, being able to deliver on these types of transformational ideas, I think it will be absolutely awesome.
50 seconds each. What are some of the reasons why the health services in Grenada has deteriorated so much, or if not deteriorated, not necessarily advanced over the years?
You wish to go first, or you want me to go first?
50 seconds
Well,
each.
I mean, put it this way. A new hospital in and of itself will not change the outcomes, right? A lot of it has to do with the quality and quantity of professionals you have, right, who are giving services. Whether it starts with the janitor, you go to the nursing assistant, the nurses, the anesthesiologist, the surgeon, the pediatrician, that's important. I mean, my story is that my daughter was born 2 pounds 12 ounces in the General Hospital and survived, right? No particular fancy equipment, but just the skill and care of the nursing staff and the doctors, right? Both of whom are Cuban trained, by the way, which is another conversation. But I'm told that there were babies born even younger than she was and survived at the General Hospital. So I'm saying, and that's 21 years ago. Now you have seemingly healthy baby arriving and leaving within days, right? So things have deteriorated. There's no doubt about that. And it's not just the building, but I think the quality and the quantity of nursing staff as well as doctors available to look after patients who get there. And I think the general thing to the public, is to really try and stay away from the hospital. You know what I mean? What do I mean by that? Try and eat proper, right? Get in some exercise, get enough sleep, drink some water. Do whatever you have to do to try and remain healthy. And most important, especially for us men, do your annual medicals. Critical. Because we play the fool, and then we show up in the doctor's office wanting a miracle. It don't work that way. You see what I'm saying? When you reach, your problem is the only problem. That should be solved. Do what you have to do so you help the entire system. So I just thought I would say that. And we come back to the whole question of primary health care, which if we get that right, it would minimize and reduce the burden in terms of tertiary health care in the facilities and so on. But yeah.
Okay. 171.3 million allocated for health and wellness and religious affairs. You're happy with that figure?
Well, we are the topic of health. I guess it has to be allocated, given the plans that government have to address health and wellness. And I do want to say as well that I fully support Mr. Duncan's statements just a while ago. Preventative care is best, but we also have to recognize that there are obviously some challenges and some difficulties in some people really being able to access the kind of healthy foods that is needed to keep them that way. Notwithstanding, I do think that Grenadians as a whole have kind of moved away from what we have been accustomed to, grown up on. We kind of have been staying away from our own local foods and so forth, and this has really costed our people health-wise. But I think that the amount, again, is intentional, and it does speak to government's intent to really and truly address the health problems. So I can't say whether or not I am happy or not with it, other than the fact that I can say that it just does speak to intent. And just to quickly go back to the question that you have asked, to add to what Mr. Duncan has said in terms of what we feel have deteriorated, and I think culture is a part of it. I want to agree with Mr. Duncan that the culture has certainly changed. I usually say to people, and I usually get a little bit wary when people constantly knock the healthcare system. I think it's important to look at things holistically. Yes, there may be some issues going on, but I also think that there are some doctors and nurses really doing their ultimate best under very measly circumstances, not having access to all of these incredible equipments and so on, being able to make those choices that ultimately leads to life and death. I think culturally we have to get back to our people recognizing the the nobility of these jobs. It's not just, I'm a doctor, I'm a nurse, but it's a noble profession, understanding the value of caring for people, loving people, as well as management, being able to correct and instruct, and if necessary, telling people goodbye if you're not going to abide by the standards. So we really have to seriously deal with these issues if we want to see the hospital and medical care services as a whole improve. But I think the value of the money speaks again to government's intent and the swiftness within which they actually want to address these issues.
Great. Now let's look at education and whether it's Sparrow singing the value of education, or whether you hear it in poems. I think over and over we've heard it, that it is important that everybody get a good education to enhance professions or whatever they would delve into, and whether you're in agriculture or you're in fishery, whatever the case is, it's so important to have a good education. And we're noticing, I'm just trying to pick up here what the allotment is for education. Must have just lost it a bit. But obviously it plays such a significant role. Do you think that we have handled education pretty well over the years? We have allotted significant or enough monies into this very important arm of the nation's development?
Well, I had a colleague in the Ministry of Finance when we were in budget, and you planning on doing the budgeting and so on, and people keep asking for more money. And he said to me, say, Richie, the bigger the budget you give these people, the bigger the mess they make.
That's interesting.
No, I'm telling you, that was his point.
That's interesting.
So it's not the amount of money that you allocate that it is necessary but not sufficient. What are you going to do with that money? And do you have the capacity, you come back to the same thing, to properly execute the plans and programs that you have? And the question is, what are those plans and programs? How are they aligned to your National Sustainable Development Plan? How are they aligned to closing the deficits in the labor market? If you don't do that, we're just simply going wrong, pouring money around the same old way. And the reason why I coming back to the National Development Plan, the cry and the lament of today, those seeds were sown in 1984, 85, 86, with the brilliant idea that Bernadette Bailey, Boca, Waltham Junior Secondary, Grenville Secondary, I think about 2 others, as junior secondary schools where vocational and skills were the primary plank of those junior secondary schools was totally uprooted and destroyed. So the lament today, that was sown 30, 40 years ago, and we catching our royal to come to the realization that, guys, it was wrong, it was a mistake, we have to fix it. Right? You look at Trinidad with John Donaldson.
Yes.
I mean, you look at Jamaica, right? These guys had it right, right? But we made the mistake by destroying what the revolution built back then. And today we say we don't have the skills, we don't have the this, we don't have the that, we have to import labor, of course. You have to import labor because it did not cultivate over those years, bearing in mind how the economy, how the country was developing, so you could prepare your labor force for
Right. So 184 million allocated for education, and I think you've got 1.5 million for free tuition. How important is that?
Well, again, I think we all know, not all of us believe that knowledge acquisition is the foundation for liberation. Meaning that you can earn a living, you can earn a livelihood, either as an employer, an entrepreneur, a business person, as the case may be. Therefore, access to relevant education or educational opportunities based on your aspirations and your, what will I say, natural abilities and what have you not, is critical. And there are things that would limit access to education by people. Right? Some of us back in the day have been lucky enough to get a scholarship to do first degree, masters, PhD, all kind of stuff. Right? At the expense of taxpayers, by the way.
Yes.
Right? So a policy which says tuition and certain other limitations will not be a fetter to the population accessing relevant proper education is an excellent one. Back in the day when we were going to school, I think school fees to go to IFE, I think was $100 or whatever, right? But what the government did every term, they slashed it by half. So you move from 100 to 50 to 25 to 1250, then they did away with it, right? And therefore you saw people from the rural parts, because all the Form 6s were abolished, so everybody had to come to Tantine, and that's where we bonded, we grew, and we got our foundation to make our contribution to national development. So I'm saying that the philosophy which says constraints to people accessing relevant education are going to be removed, whether gradually on one fell swoop in an affordable way, is important. And then with the Spice Bus initiative in terms of transportation, there are people who genuinely, right, don't maximize educational opportunities because of transportation. Okay, so these things would help.
Okay, we've got to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be looking at renewable energy, and we'll be looking also at housing. That's very important. And we'll be giving you an opportunity to call in and give us your thoughts. We'll give you the information that you would need to call in. We'll be right back.
Boy, yo, they gonna fly with kite now. The wind picking up.
I'm coming. Karim, what are you doing?
Fly my kite.
Yeah, but not here. You can't fly kite near power lines, boy.
Why not? The wind good.
Because mommy say kite threads conduct electricity.
Yeah, kite. It's right. If your kite gets stuck in power lines, it can cause power outages, or even worse, it can get shocked.
Come, let's go and fly them in the pasture.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Grenlink, energizing our Grenada.
Agritech Limited Grenada is your one-stop shop for all your farming needs. We provide seeds and seedlings, pesticides, fertilizers, irrigation and water management systems, veterinary products, and a wide range of agricultural products and implements. Our staff is knowledgeable and ready to serve you. Call us on 435-9677 or 440-4460 or visit us in Happy Hill, St. George. We are open Monday to Saturday, 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and on Sundays, 6 a.m. to 1 p.m. Agritech Limited Grenada. Come grow with us.
And welcome back. Well, the truth is, everybody needs a house. That's for sure. And of course, with the challenge with Hurricane Beryl wreaked on us, it interfered, affected so many houses, particularly in Carriacou, Martinique, and also in the northern range of the country. We've learned that the Emergency Housing Recovery Plan, 10 million, and the Government Home Improvement and Soft Loan Program, 15 million. So we got 25 million. You think, Ms. Munroe, that the government has really put its foot forward, so to speak, and said, hey, we're going to see how we can develop the housing sector here in Grenada?
Yes, and I think in addition to those allocations, the Project 500, again, is another very pronounced way of the government not just saying, but based again on the budgetary information. I'm speaking strictly to what has been documented and presented. There seems to be a very direct intention to address. One of the things as well that was highlighted in the budget with regards to its presentation is the fact that they just don't want to go into housing, but they're looking at sustainable housing and bearing in mind again the natural risk that we are exposed to and that persons are generally exposed to. So I think if government is taking a decision to go do a project that will address the housing needs for various persons within the country who otherwise cannot access, and wanting to caveat that with ensuring that the houses are of a particular stock, I think it's an excellent way to set the tone and to set an example for the nation as well in terms of private home owners. I think it also documents and records the need, and it's a way of marketing, so to speak, to the broader country, why it is that we need to bear sustainability in mind. So again, it's very intentional. The fact that the budget again has been allocated to doing that indicates to me that government is serious to the extent that the project, in terms of its implementation and the amount of persons that can benefit, that may be a different conversation for a different time. But I do not think that it can be argued that there is an intention and there is actually an allocated intention to get that done and to get it done with respect to climate change. And I think that is it's favorable.
There has been quite a bit of question, Mr. Duncan, in regards to the current St. David's housing project, and quite a number of people have expressed disappointment that the houses have not been occupied as they should be. There's also the concern about the infrastructure, the road leading to that area in and out. Those are genuine concerns. Your thoughts?
Yes, well, I'm not particularly familiar with the current housing scheme, but suffice it to say that we do not do a good job with infrastructure planning, right? Roads are too narrow. They are built not with the future in mind. People are allowed to build houses, right, with nowhere to park vehicles, and no sooner the house is done, they want to buy two with nowhere to park them. So it's just, there's really no planning and no enforcement. So I'm not surprised if it is that you may have these challenges, with the housing scheme in current, but I'm not familiar with the fine details. In terms of people, if those are the homes where people were given the opportunity to purchase them through financing from financial institutions, then the question would have to be asked whether or not the income of those persons who have been targeted is sufficient to get a loan to buy the particular units and so on. But I'm really not, au fait with that specific project.
Well, I know that people have been saying those who really should get the houses haven't been getting the houses. Rather, it should go to people who genuinely need a home, while there are others who, believe that those who can afford otherwise have been given opportunities. Have you heard those little comments?
Well, it's interesting that we deal with the question of affordability. You can only afford what your financier, your banker, says you can afford. You see what I'm saying? So you cannot blame someone else, right? As far as I'm aware, the actual valuation, opinion of an expert as to the value of some of these properties is way above the price at which the government is selling. So it is actually being subsidized. And if it is subsidized and you still cannot afford it, it simply means that is not for you. We had to look for another housing model, and that is why it is so important that it's not one size fits all. You have to have different sizes, different configuration of these houses to meet people's pocket, right? As some people like to say, you cannot, do not hang your hat where your hand can reach. That is one of the points that old people always say. So that's an important point, right? Affordability, it's subsidized, and you still cannot qualify. It means that size, structure, and what have you not, unless the government has a free housing program now, where people who are indigent and otherwise can get accommodation, but able-bodied men and women of working age need to aspire. So if you want a house of a particular kind, then you have to work 2 jobs, run a small business, or go back to school, get some skills. That's how you motivate and you encourage people to do better, to be more, to reach to higher heights. And most of us, I will tell you, my mom, when she bought a house to put in Grand Anse Valley, you could actually have put the house in bags, pieces of house. She bought an old boathouse, right, to bring to Grand Anse Valley. And on a Sunday, people from the village, library, went down to Grand Anse Valley and helped to construct the house. Today, with her son working on a cruise ship, which is very hard work, raising his own family, assisted her to build a concrete structure that is of comparable, strength and everything else, and very well appointed. So you move from one generation to the next. It's not instant. So therefore people must say, listen, this is where we are now as a family, but I'll suck salt, I'll send you to school, you'll get a job, you'll start a business, but we will develop as a family and build a better home over the years. So intergenerational wealth, intergenerational sacrifice, critical.
Okay, viewers, we will post the number on the screen. We want to give you an opportunity to call in 440-1252. That's the number you would like to call, and you can do so now. Our panelists are efficient enough to answer you accordingly. So it's 440-1252. You can give us a call. We're kind of coming closer to the end of the program. Let's turn our attention to agriculture. Traditionally, we've been known to be a country versed in agriculture. We're told that we've got some of the best soils in the entire Caribbean, and I think not too many people can argue against that, so to speak. Have we put sufficient emphasis on agriculture over the years, Ms. Munroe?
Well, I want to speak more specific to the current budget. I did look at the allocations and comparative to things like infrastructure, education, health, agriculture, it pales in comparison to those focus points. Now, the government does have a certain amount of things that it can focus on in a given 12-month period, and so one can understand that, and with some of its initiatives and some of the themes that it wants to focus on, one can also understand why some of those areas would be allocated even more. However, I just want to make the point that it is really absolutely crucial if we intend to expand and grow as an economy, that the productive sector must be given significant attention. I think that there are a myriad of opportunities within those sectors, particularly agriculture, that can be developed. I think sometimes persons may veer away from it simply because those are investments, quite frankly, that will take a very long time, and sometimes based on the priorities set by any given government, it just may not be what they wish to expend a significant portion on. But I must say that the move to address the failed MNIB with the new import-export agro-processing company, I felt very good to see that. I think more discussion should be had in terms of how well that particular entity can be diversified. I wouldn't want to see a replica of MNIB, and when I say that, just to deal with raw agro-processing or just deliveries of fruits and vegetables from the soil. I think if we speak in transformation, that entity needs to be able to consider other forms of agricultural related products, agricultural related investments. It should be providing an opportunity for entrepreneurs within that field to be able to get on board. We may never get to a situation where we are net exporting. Grenada is small, but like you said, we need to be able to leverage on what we have. It's what we have that will multiply and give us what we need going forward. So yes, there is some focus. Yes, there is some timelines as well within which that particular agro-processing company will come on stream. But I think going forward, I would want to see some measure of a greater allocation and plan in that area for reasons that I have outlined.
Okay, we do have a caller on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome to Beyond the Headlines.
Good evening.
Go right ahead, please.
All right, so I just had a couple of, one question in particular. What is your views on the Minister of Opposition's response in terms of a critique of the level of spend versus allocation for last year's budget? I think there are a couple of instances that she mentioned. It was like maybe sometime at 25% of what was allocated was spent. And she also made mention of the school books, the free education program, that despite having free education, there wasn't an uptick in the number of persons attending college, for example. What are your views on that?
Yes.
No, in terms of the shortfall in expenditure, that is what budgeting is all about, right? Budgeting is an estimate, it's a plan, and therefore you are likely to be wrong in terms of the estimate that you make. I think what is important, and this is an age-old problem in public sector budgeting, all over the world. Grenada is chronic from ever since. The issue is, have we built the discipline to see, even if a project is going to be $10 million, you are now starting out. You cannot absorb, you cannot execute the activities to do the project in one fell swoop. The project might be a 3-year project, so why budget for $10 million as opposed to $1 million in the first year when you're just going to be doing the designs and the drawings and the engineering and what? You understand me? Rather than putting $10 million repeatedly, So we need to be smarter than that, and maybe what they should be seen in the budget, right, is total $10 million. Year 1, $500,000. Year 2, $5 million. Year 3, 4.5. Based on how you intend the project to spread over a 3 or 4 or 5 year period, as the case may be. So I think smarter budgeting is required, and I've lamented on the point of execution velocity. Do you have the capacity to implement with the speed and accuracy that is required to get these things done within the time frame that you say you intend to do it? In terms of the enrollment in TAMCC and NULO and stuff like that, I don't have the numbers, but my daughter just left TAMCC 2.5 years ago, and from casual observation, casual observation, there are more students in Tantine now than there were then.
Okay.
But the numbers would speak for themselves.
I think we've got another call on the line. Yeah, caller, go right ahead. Good evening.
Right. There was a contentious issue in the debate today.
Go ahead.
With respect to the government presenting a surplus on the current account. And at the same time, you also talking about incurrence of a deficit of $337 million, I think. Can you can you give some clarity on that matter?
You understand what he's saying?
Yeah, I didn't understand the question. So, okay, so let's start with the current account. That is the current account surplus or deficit is the difference between the money that you earn and what you spend for regular day-to-day activities. Salaries, wages, pension, transportation, electricity, telephone, those are regular consumption things. So if you have more revenue and less expenditure on such things, you end up with a current account surplus. So that's what the government has, where it is earning more than it is using for regular ongoing consumption. So the surplus current account is $86-point-something million or thereabouts. Then you have your capital expenditure, for which you will get grants and so on and so forth. Your capital expenditure is financed partly by the surplus that you have, right, which is not enough to cover your capital budget, so you end up with an overall deficit. And the capital expenditure, the capital investment, is your roads, your schools, your bridges, your hospitals, okay? Things that you have to invest in to safeguard and to promote your productive capacity, to have the economy propelling forward. That's your capital expenditure. So the overall deficit now, because you eat up the $86 million already in current account surplus, that has to be financed. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with that deficit budget. I have argued elsewhere that budget deficits are all over the world, has been in Grenada from time immemorial. The problem is, first of all, when the deficit initially shows up on your current account, that's when the money you're making from your taxes and so on, your revenue, cannot even pay for your electricity, your salaries, your pension. You have a current account deficit. That's the start of the problem. You're not in that situation. But when the deficit occurs, the problem that the budgeteer has is, how am I going to finance that deficit? You have options, right? You could sell off some assets and get some money. You can withdraw deposits, if you have any, that you have built up over the years, and you can borrow. So asset sale, you probably scratch that. Not important, you have no more NCB to sell, no more telephone company, right? No more whatever, right? So then you say, okay, I'm going to borrow, right? You could borrow from the banking system, you could borrow from what we call the regional government securities market, or the Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, whichever one you choose to use, right? That I applaud, because it gives an opportunity to Grenadians to participate in the endeavors of the government, by buying treasury bills on the Regional Government Securities Exchange. So my advice is find a broker-dealer. There's one in Grenada. There are several outside of Grenada, but they're all available online. Open a brokerage account for which you don't have to put any money in at all. It is when you're ready to make a purchase of an investment, you find the money to send to your broker, and you give the broker instructions. So it's an opportunity. People who have been in the treasury bill business because government has borrowed in the past, keep rolling them over because the interest is good, better than what they're getting in the bank. So you have a chance with this fresh issue of treasury bills now to get a piece of the action. NIS will buy, pension plans would buy, and not just pension plans and NIS in Grenada, but throughout the region, because on the regional securities market. So you need to get a piece of the action. That's my advice. And then you also have the government saying that I'm going to draw down some monies from deposits which I have in the banking system and at ECCB. If you read the documents carefully, especially from the IMF, right, government has money in the banking system and at ECCB that it could use to fund the deficit, and that's the option that they have to, those two options: drawdown of deposits and issue of new treasury bills. So I think I would rest my case here in terms of, my friend, what appears to be confusing, mesmerizing, it's not as
complex as it looks.
No, not at all. Not
okay.
At all.
We have another call on the line. Caller, good evening. Welcome.
Hey?
Go ahead, please. You're live. Go right ahead.
Yeah, I want to speak to Mr. Duncan.
Just go ahead. Shoot your question.
Yeah, Mr. Duncan. Yeah.
Yeah, would you please turn down the volume?
I understand the budget.
Sir, turn your volume down. Just listen straight through the phone. Okay, so let's talk via the phone only.
On my phone, I was just talking to Mr. Duncan.
All right, so go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I just want to hear Mr. Duncan now. Boss is a good man. I get the budget, I understand the budget. Yeah, but I just want to understand now. My case is really with Leah. With Leah from 1974 to now. I want to know, you were there, you understand everything. So where we are now, right? So let me hear from you where we are now.
Oh, okay, so thank you for calling. Mr. Duncan will address it briefly.
Yeah, but I think the caller is speaking about Liat 1974, which went into bankruptcy,
yes,
as we know, through COVID, low, passenger movement and stuff like that. I think, and that's the sad part when these companies fail, right? Clico, Baico, they fail, people get hurt, right? Liat fail, people get hurt. And that is why, as managers, as directors of these companies and these entities, we have to be so, what would I say, skilled in managing the risk that we are faced with in these enterprises and so on. Because Liat was owned by several governments, the thinking is that these governments really and truly, out of a social responsibility standpoint, should chip in and some way help these workers, because they have not just lost the income in terms of the daily bread, I think they have lost the pensions as well, and that's a big lesson for some of us, right? That the pension plans that we have in these workplaces, in fact, it's now illegal that you invest the money of the pension plan in the company where you are working. It is against the law. If the company fails, your pension plan should be elsewhere, right? So you can, the risk is spread, so to speak. So Liat is a sad story, in my view. I believe the government of Antigua has taken measures to protect its own to a certain extent. The offer made to other workers, I don't think was particularly appealing. But so friend, I don't have any more details or information, but I don't know. The strength of the lobby of the former employees probably could be brought to bear on the governments in the respective countries. So I say out of a social conscience to meet the workers along the way. But they are not obligated, you see, and that's the nature of, bankruptcy in these situations. Very, very unfortunate.
I did, in fact, listen to this is unrelated, listen to the presentation made by the leader of the opposition. And she bemoaned the fact that many of our government ministers, they've been traveling with alarming regularity, and the cost accrued has been astronomical. You're probably in a better position than Ms. Munroe to comment about it. Let's say your thought, because it was raised quite a lot.
But no, but I mean that is what the opposition do, you see, and I believe that when the opposition raises certain issues, like the travel and so on, you want to travel a little bit more frequently. Only because oppositions are aware that the travel is purposeful and beneficial. Purposeful and beneficial, because every mission that a government delegation goes on, if they report, they could tell you the connections that were made, the opportunities that were explored, and the assistance that has been secured.
It has been more than commensurate.
But that's the point. But not only that, it's not every travel mission is funded by taxpayers, right? In fact, even the previous government has a policy which guides when it is you use taxpayers' money, and when it is the person who invite you actually pays, for you to travel. So traveling and connecting, whether it's for diplomacy, whether it's for economic aid and so forth, is extremely important. If you're not connected in this world, your access to resources, your access to people who can make things happen for on behalf of the population, those opportunities are lost, right? And once that happens, it means that you suffer. Your people are set back. So, to repeat, to me, what the government has to do is to make sure it further fine-tunes and calibrate the networks and the connection that it is building for on behalf of taxpayers, and to demonstrate the benefits and the returns from those connections. I mean, I was around one instance, travel not involved, but where because of the connectedness of the government, there was a particular loan, Saudi loan, that was available to all or several of the OECS countries. And the Saudis established a particular interest rate with several other countries. When the Ministry of Finance team looked at it, the conclusion was the terms and conditions are not soft enough, what they call the grant element. So they said to the Saudis, hey, as a developing country, if we have to borrow this money from you, the grant element has to be X. And therefore the rate has to come down, the repayment period has to be extended. Everybody else of the island signed, Grenada said, no, we're not signing, let's sit down and negotiate. And they did that. The Minister of Finance left for, I think, an IMF World Bank meeting in Morocco. And it was in that meeting on the sidelines, he was able to connect with his Saudi counterpart and clinch the deal. Now, you look at $100 million US, right? And in fact, I think that mission then was also paid for by the World Bank. So that was a kind of free mission where you get a reduced interest rate, a longer repayment period, right? Tens of millions of dollars off from that negotiation. How much plane ticket I could buy? Probably government could travel for the next 5 years once a week because the benefits are there, right? So it does pay off. And I think what the government has to continue doing is demonstrating when it is their pay, when it is who invite them pays, and what are the returns for the state.
I think relatedly, Mrs. Munroe, is the whole question of foreign relations. I don't know if Grenada has been very strong on that over the years. I see that there have been an effort now to explore possibilities in Africa, for example, where we've got 54, 55 countries. We have our traditional fraternal friends. How important it is to seek to get get other friends, what you may call the non-traditional traditional ones?
Yes, some moves. I mean, listen, every government is different, and that's one of the beautiful things about democracy. You get an opportunity to experience something different, different outlooks, different viewpoints. This government, it seems, is seeing some degree of benefit in diversifying its relationship. I cannot at all say that that is a bad thing. Just briefly, we know exactly what is taking place with the United States of America. We do have a president with a very protectionist view of his country, and while persons may hold different views to that, I think every single leader is within their full right to execute their vision as they see fit. Now, you may have a lot of clamoring in terms of this leader, that leader, in terms of policies. Yes, some policies may hurt, but every government ought to know that every leader will be different. They will come with different policies, different outlook. I think it is fitting for the government to explore other international relationships through different countries. Of course, the vetting needs to be done. We also need to make sure that those interactions, that they are beneficial to us and that they make sense. We also have to make sure, notwithstanding how we may view the circumstances that are going on right now with the United States of America, to what extent our relationship with these newfound countries may in fact benefit us or cause more problem for us. These are things that we need to seriously look at, but regardless of how we put it, we do need to know our place, and we also very much need to extend our relationship in other areas with other countries to ensure that the policy changes from government to government, particularly in democracies, does not wipe out, for example, our relationship with them and the benefits that we get with them. So I do think it is important to do so. We just need to do it carefully. We need to assess those countries, and we definitely need to see how our relationship with them might create a problem for us. We need to be aware of these things and be very strategic about it, but I think it is something that definitely needs to be done. The political landscape is changing very quickly, and we have to look forward before things catch on to us and put us in problems.
Yeah, time is running away very quickly, but there is a relation. So I want to just shoot here at Mr. Duncan, because he's chairman of C.B.I. Tell us, please, what's been happening there? How beneficial has it been for Grenada with the program? And of course, if you listen to President Trump, he is going to be moving in that direction too. You know, the competition out there is going to become stiffer and stiffer in the ensuing years.
I agree with you. So CBI in Grenada is what I call accepted public policy, meaning that it is accepted across the political divide, across political parties. One administration started it, the next one continue and try to build on it and make it better for Grenada. So that's well established. So we have seen the last 3 years, let's say 22, 23, 24, right? A very robust and successful performance, in particular in 2023 and 24, mainly driven by our ability to process a backlog of Russian applications which we had. So that said, the National Transformation funded exceedingly well. The Six Senses Hotel has been constructed, completed, and is operational. The Beach House by Silversan up and operational. The Intercontinental is going great guns, right, with probably over 200 workers there as we speak, right, trying to finish the hotel in time for 2027. And of course, Grenada National Resort in St. Patrick has been going, full steam ahead. So, and those are the bigger ones. There are smaller projects in and between. So it has been a good run for us. What we do know is that come 2025, having already processed the Russian backlog, we are going to see a decrease in the number of applications being processed and a decrease in the amount of revenue. Ministry of Finance has already programmed for that decrease, so it's not something that's going to catch you by surprise. The CEO and his team, they have worked exceedingly hard in 2024 because our objective for 25, 26, 27 is to make sure that our numbers return to the pre-Russian-Ukraine level. Right? That's a normalized number that we are looking at, and we are working towards that in 2025. Competition, yes, across the globe. Citizenship by investment, residency by investment, these are sound, well-established, legally, in some cases regulated enterprises. So Mr. Trump has his gold card, that's fine. But not only is that fine, right? In the C.B.I. space, we have been seeing since 2023 and going into 2024 an increasing number of applications from the United States.
Interesting.
Interestingly. Right? So global mobility is not something that is restricted to high net worth individuals or to Russia, China, Nigeria, South Africa. It is also emanating, right? So so the environment that is changing. We have in the region agreed to set up a regulatory commission to regulate the space, right? That is extremely important because we need to lower the risk profile of the program, make sure that we have increased robustness in our due diligence to keep the bad actors out and to make sure that those who might be